Dead. Says we live.
Waiting for it.
It says it on the screen up top on my
Yeah,
thing.
we're live.
We live, baby. Intentional Talk. Episode 3.
All right, so welcome to episode 3 of Intentional Talk. I am Tyron McMillan. I have Mr. Queen Thornton and Mr. Corey Hollis, along with Mr. Willie Terrell. So to get our discussion started, we have an interesting discussion ahead of us. And the question that I want to ask my three co-hosts is, do you think that Black people can be racist to white people? So who would like to start? Who would like to start that discussion off? Do we think Black people can be racist to white people?
You want to start it off, Corey?
Yeah, I started off. Why not? I keep it short. So, yes, I do think that Black people can be racist to white people. You know, when I think of racism, I think of a term. I think of it as like hatred or a type of prejudice. You know, something negative is what I think. You know, I definitely think that Black people can be racist toward white people. I've heard people say that Black people can't be racist, but you know, I don't agree with that statement. I definitely think that Black people can be racist. You know, all it takes is for a Black person to say one thing derogatory or one thing that is not appropriate or acceptable, and I think that it could be deemed as racist. So I definitely think that it can be racist. Black people can be racist toward white people.
Yeah, absolutely. I say anybody can be racist to anybody because racism is being biased or showing prejudice to any type of cultural anything like that. So yes, anybody can be racist to absolutely anybody. And I've heard those things also that saying Black people can't be racist. Well, that's absolutely untrue. If you think of somebody who might say, "Oh, that person's white. Oh, he can't dance." Well, that's you automatically being prejudiced towards somebody else just because of the color of their skin or something that they believe in. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Tyron? What you think, man?
Hold on, I wanted to see if Mr. Willie Terrell can talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. There you go.
You know, I'm kind of experienced. You definitely can be racist. I mean, by definition, racist is any kind of prejudice, bias. Anytime you judge a group based on a collective action, anytime that you make an assumption of a group based solely on which group they belong to, racism. And we see it all the time. If you see somebody, athletes, and they line up to race, and it's a white kid and a Black kid, you know, somewhere consciously, if you say, "Oh, I think this Black kid's gonna win," and that's based on him being, or if you say, "I think this white kid's gonna," and that's based on him being white, then you're being racist. So, I mean, inevitably, if you can see color lines, if you can see different groups, and if you can make assumptions based on what you see, and that assumption is based on their race, then you're being a racist. So anybody with eyes can be racist or participate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna have to go against all three of you guys, and I'm gonna say no. And I don't think that Black people can be racist. And the reason why I state this is because, to me, when I think about racism, I'm thinking about institutions, and a lot of the institutions that maintain power or that can or any institutions of power, they're, first of all, they are ran, or the CEOs are white males most of the time. So to me, I don't think black people can be racist towards white people. I think that we can discriminate against white people. I think that we can also be biased against white people. But to the point of being racist, I would say no, because to me, as black people, we don't hold the power in a lot of these institutions to change or make any effects like white people have over black people. So when we talk about systemic racism, those white people have that power to, employ those people, or white people have the power to make laws that affect black people. So to me, can black people be racist towards white people? I'm going to say no. Once again, I think that we can discriminate against white people, but at the end of the day, once that white person leaves that institution, or if I'm a manager, I can discriminate against a white person, correct? But at the end of the day, when that white person leaves, they're not going to be affected by anything that I've done. So to me, I'm gonna say no.
But yeah, so you say they're not going to be affected. Oh, I like this. So you say they're not going to be affected by anything that you done. Well, I could say the same exact thing. Somebody could be racist towards me. I'm not going to be affected. I'm going to look the other way. I'm going to say, okay, I can shrug it off. I got a strong moral code. I can shrug things off. So I'm not going to be affected if somebody shows racism towards me. I just think when we think about racism, we got to take it from, all right, what is the definition of racism?
Right.
It's prejudice or bias towards another group or culture or race. So technically, if we're going by the definition, we can, yes, black people can be racist. Anybody can be racist. By that definition, we can absolutely be racist.
Well, Quayne, let me jump in there with you, because the definition of racism is discrimination. If you look up the definition of racism, literally the second word says discrimination of bias. So if black people could be discriminated towards white people, then they're operating in racism. And racism has nothing to do with power. It's a matter of perception. Racism is a matter of perception. It's how you perceive based on information that should not speak for them. If I perceive you as a threat because you're black, that your color skin should not communicate. So because I've linked you, I linked my perceptions of how you behave based on your color or based on your race. And as a black person, you can look at any race or any person. It's not about black and white. If you ever made a joke about Hispanic and thought that they traveled in like anytime you start to you see one race or you start to have norms, that's racist. Matter of fact, I don't think anybody can be without racism. That's to be without bias. Now, does that mean you have to act on it? No, but is it there? Yes.
So I like what Crane said when he said, I as an individual can it's not going to affect me as an individual. But also when you talk about racism, yes, it's discrimination against a group. So in society, we look at each other as a group. So yes, as an individual, I won't be affected by, if a white person treats me wrong or a white person discriminates against me, I'm not going to be affected. But in society, you got to think about, white supremacy and white superiority. So therefore, when we talk about groups and we talk about institutions, those institutions are held by majority of white people. So therefore, yes, as an individual, I can get up every day and not be affected by, discrimination or by one white person, because that's my mindset. But when we're talking about racism, we're talking about we have to talk about a group of people. I can't just say I'm not going to be affected. But remember, also we talk about white privilege. So that's what I mean by, when that white person leave, if I'm the manager and that white person leave, there's still going to be benefits from them just being white. Unlike me as a black man, I'm not going to have those same benefits. When we talk about an Italian person, guess what? They're Italian, but because of white privilege, they can get by being what? By being white. I cannot get by as a black man by being white. I'm not going to have those privileges.
Yeah,
so,
but
and that go ahead.
The problem with that, and the way that you try to conceptualize racism, you forget that even as a black man, I could be racist against another black person. Like it has nothing to do with power constructs. And it's not how we treat a group, it's how we treat an individual based on a group, which is very different. It's not like if George Floyd died as an individual, all of a sudden that's not a racist act because he was an individual. That's not what Quame's saying. But what he is saying is, though, that based on him belonging to a group of people, now you're as an individual. That's what racism is about. And racism can exist. It's not a black and white issue. As a black person, you can have very racist tendencies towards other black people, and we often do. And that's why we talk about black on black crime and some of the other things. That's internal racism, because you as yourself start to identify you as the lesser. So those who belong in the group, you feel like they're lesser. And you'll see a black person at times with a mentality that they'd rather kill another black person, but a white cop would come and you run. Why? Right? Because it's about a perception, right? That this person, like myself, is without worth. So now I can pull a trigger on them. So like racism is a much bigger thing than like what institutions do or who's at the top. It's really about perception, and it really comes down to human behavior. And that's something that's not a black or white issue.
So what you're saying,
I'll say, if we go back to the question let's go back to the question that you asked. The question that you asked was, can black people be racist? What is reality now is that, because you brought up systematic racism and the things that are happening in these big companies and all over the world. That is, yes, what has happened. Yes, you're right on all those things, but your question was, can black people be racist? Is it a possibility that a black person can be racist? Absolutely.
To a white person?
Absolutely. You're asking, can it happen? If you're saying that it never can happen, then that would be absolutely ridiculous.
I never said never.
Because the opposite of can would be that, yes, there's a possibility that it can. Well, the opposite of can would be that it would never, ever happen.
I'm never going to say never.
So a black person can be racist.
No, but I'm just saying, as far as, go ahead, Corey. Let
me say this. This is just a broad statement. So let's say if a black guy wanted to date a white girl, and the white girl was like, I can't bring you home because of what my family would think. What would you call her family? What would most people call her family? They would call them racist, or they would say they're prejudiced, discriminatory. Now let's flip it. What if the same thing happened with a black guy? A black guy wanted to bring a white girl home, but the black family said, don't bring no white girl home. Could that not be perceived as the same thing?
It can be perceived, but what I'm talking about is, to me, when we talking about like racism, and maybe we can talk about like I say, I'm looking at it from the point of white supremacy and institutional wise. Like, I just don't think that as black people, I think it comes to, yes, I can discriminate against them, I can have biases. I think a lot of it is biases. It's just things that we don't understand.
Yeah, but I think racism is more than just white supremacy. I think racism could be any group with any type of hatred or discriminatory action toward anybody. I don't look at it as a white supremacy thing. I look at it as any group.
And I like, sorry about that, I didn't mean to cut you off. But like I like what you say. Like they might not just understand well. Then the person has to be willing to open up, and that's on both sides of the track. Just like racist white folks, they have to be willing to open up, because a lot of these racist tendencies and thoughts are just things that were passed down, and they may not have been open-minded enough to say, all right, let me learn about this different culture. Let me learn about this different group of people. So they have to be willing to open up and learn about these different individuals,
All right, so let's hold on. Let's stop here, and I want to go to, because before I bring El Gesto, and I want to ask the second question that we're going to talk about. So let's talk. Hold on.
Hey, Willie, you're muted.
Willie, you're muted.
Yeah. Hey, let me throw this on. I know we want to move, but real quick. and I just can't pass this point. Of course, black people are racist. We all are racist, if we want to be honest. We all have it. It's not a matter if we have it or not. It's a matter if you're going to be aware and act on it. Case in point, if you walk into a cafeteria and it's a table full of black people and a table full of white people, where do you sit? Now, you can sit here in line and say, I'm going to go sit with the white people. But 9 out of 10, you're going to go sit with the black. Why? Because where you feel comfortable. That's racist action. Why?
That's not racism.
Based on where you think you would fit in. And anytime you make a decision based on a group rather than an individual count, it's racism.
That is not racism. That's classism. That's where you feel. That's where you feel comfortable at. So
Racism.
Just because I sit with a group of black people, that's where I feel comfortable at.
Okay, so but you made that decision based on what? Not based on did you know them? No, you made a decision based on what? Oh, I would feel comfortable because they're what? Black. Okay, so when you make a decision based on a group and not actual information, that's racism.
But no, that's been an idealist. Like, can you relate to a group of black people, or can you relate to a group of white people? And let's just be honest. I don't think that have anything to do with being racist, because I sit with who I feel comfortable with, or who
I decline because I can fit in with a group of white people.
I can too.
So then I might not make that decision, because matter of fact, I might trigger say, hold on, I want to go over here with all the black kids, but that's racist. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go sit with the white kids. That's being aware, because if you're not aware, sometimes you can't change it. I know we're gonna get to the next segment, so I'm just
about to say, hey y'all, it's 7:20.
All right,
we gotta move.
So I love this. The next question before we bring our guest on is, do you believe that black supremacy exists? Do we believe that black supremacy exists? And
oh, y'all trying to get me fired. Y'all trying to get me in trouble. We Facebook Live. We asking this kind of questions. I think that the idea.
Let's be tactful.
I think that the idea of black supremacy exists. I think that anybody can think that their certain race is supreme. And I gotta tread careful here, because to me, it's not a problem with black supremacy or white supremacy or yellow or green or blue. And I know that might come as a shock, but no, not really. Because if I was born a Caucasian man, I absolutely would think that Caucasians were the best people that ever lived. And if I was born Japanese, I probably have a similar thought. I don't see anybody getting mad when you support the Ravens over the Patriots because that's your team. It's not a problem in believing in black supremacy or white supremacy or green supremacy. I don't think that's the issue. I think when you start to treat people, I think when you start to use that idea of I'm better to say that next person is less, that's when you run into a problem. So, does that black supremacy exist? I'm sure it does. Sure it does, just like white supremacy exists. But it's a matter of is it as deadly right now in our nation? Well, no. And I think it goes down to what you said earlier, Ron, because certain people in certain powers tend to abuse and then use this opinion, right? Because that's what it is. White supremacy, black supremacy, it's an opinion. So you can have, but your opinion should not cost people lives.
I like what you said. It's more like more of a confidence thing. So like a team that you're rooting for. I've never really looked at it that way. But yes, you're right. It's like a team that you're rooting for. I'm always looking out. Now, me personally, I'm always looking for everybody everybody feeling as good as they want to about themselves. But as soon as that supremacy, as we're saying, gets to where it's belittling somebody else or is making somebody else feel worse or is killing others, then I think that point that it has gone over the line. So can it exist? Yes. Does it exist? I don't believe so at the moment. No, not in our current. I will not say in our current climate that we have. No.
I think pretty much claim what you said. It and Willie, it can exist, but I don't think that it does. When I think of supremacy, I think of clearly you think that you're better than people, but Michael Jordan, he thought he knew he was the best NBA player. You couldn't tell him nothing. You know what I'm saying? And if somebody tried to step on MJ's feet, he's still going to try to prove he's the best. Same with a lot of big time athletes. But can black supremacy exist? Excuse me. Can it exist? It could, but like when I think of like big groups, when I think of like Black Panthers or something like that, they were big groups, but did they belittle and anything like that? No, they were trying to like fight for a cause, fight for a purpose. So I think that it can exist, but I'm not sure if it does exist.
All right,
I really don't think so. All
right, so once again, I'm a kind of agree, and I don't really think that black supremacy can exist either. And because I have my other 3 black educated men that like to go to the dictionary. So the definition of supremacy is the state or condition of being superior to all others in authority, power, or status. So when we talk about Black supremacy, once again, we're talking about superior to all. So remember when we talk about like, white privilege, and we're talking about, systemic racism, where in America right now can Black supremacy exist? When we're talking about being superior to all others, I just don't think that and I heard people talking about Black supremacy, and I was talking about, Willie was talking about this, and also, talking about Terry Crews when he talked about Black supremacy. And I don't think it can exist because, once again, we don't hold enough power in the United States right now for that even to be a thought. So to me, Black supremacy, can it exist? I'm going to agree with you guys. Yes, maybe it can exist, but at this point in time,
it doesn't.
Yeah,
no, that's what I said. We in agreement then. Yeah,
I agree,
but
but I disagree because, like, once again, it's an opinion, right? Like, and I get what you're saying, Tyron. In terms of the power structure, it's really hard to imagine, some American society where Black people hold all the power. You know what I'm saying? And then the rest of the ethnic groups are dominated. So I don't, in those ways, no. But does it exist? I mean, it's hard for me to say no. When I feel like, when I wake up in the morning, I feel like me myself, I'm at the greatest. You know what I'm saying? And whether I am or not, that's the belief I have. So, I mean, if you consider that Black supremacy, maybe. Like, I go into school and I'm with a bunch of educators. The minute I step in the door, I feel like I'm better than everybody in the building. So is that supremacy? I don't know. It depends. And it's to, like, think about the sports world, right? Think about different avenues that has been granted access and the kind of contributions that might have went there. Is that, in a sense, Black supremacy? It just to me, I don't know. I'm kind of on the table.
But I think, Willie, I think to me, you're trying to marginalize it and to make it exist. Like, when we're talking about, how did white supremacy, why does white supremacy exist?
Somebody marginalized it to make it exist, and then it existed.
They didn't marginalize. They didn't marginalize white supremacy. They marginalized Black people, and they marginalized minorities.
Well, it started as a belief that you were supreme, because before you was in a power structure, right? You had to either fight for that power structure or dominate to that power structure. So it started as a belief. White supremacy started as a belief. It was a belief that as a white person, I now have authority over all. I can do what I want. And it was that very mindset that caused the fall of a lot of civilizations who just did not think like that. You got to remember, even in the conquest of Europeans, if you're going to talk history, a lot of people were killed by disarmament. Like, the Native Americans did not know they were given articles of deed. They didn't know they were passing the Spanish influenza around, right? They didn't think about engaging in such a way that they had to be on guard. So it really does come down to a mentality. White supremacy started from a mentality. It's not actually real. I mean, we don't actually believe that if you're born white, that you are really entitled to some sense of power or control over somebody. That's preposterous. That's why people are upset now, because it doesn't really exist. It's an opinion of a people who through conquest press their opinion onto other people. That's why it's called oppression, right? Because the opinion of their dominance has now been pressed onto you. So it is an idea. It's not real in any sense, unless you really believe that if you're born white, you're entitled to some kind of power, or you're entitled to dominate, or in a historical sense, kill and pillage and colonialize the rest of the world.
I totally agree, my brother. Corey, Wayne?
No, man, I'm good. I'm ready to move on.
27.
All right, so we're gonna cut it off right there so we can move on to our next segment. We're gonna have two awesome educators come on, and Corey and Quam are going to introduce them. So before you introduce them, I'm gonna bring them on. All right, so we have Mr. Clayton and Miss Felicia. So Quam, if you can go ahead and introduce Mr. Clayton for us, please.
All right, happily I will. All right, so we have on the call here Clayton Wynn. He was born here in Beaufort, South Carolina, born and raised here. He's a graduate, Coastal Carolina University, with a bachelor's in elementary education. He is a current 5th grade teacher at Ladies Island Elementary, also taught 3rd grade with yours truly at Ladies Island Elementary. He is a 2020 Teacher of the Year as well, and he's just an all-around awesome individual, Mr. Clayton Wynn.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with us, Mr. Clayton.
Corey, you know all those things about me?
Hey, Felicia, I know a good chunk. So I want to start off by also introducing a magnificent educator and a very strong educator. This is Miss Felicia Horton. She currently teaches 5th grade. Born and raised in New York, moved down to the Low Country to start something great with her family. And I really admire Felicia as an educator, and I just thought it would be great to have her on our show. And also, I think I already said this, current Teacher of the Year. So she's great.
Thank you.
So to all of my, first of all, let me say thanks Felicia and Clayton for joining us today. Thanks for, taking the opportunity to be here and be open with us. I know right now with everything that's going on. So like I said, the purpose of this segment is not to demean you by any means. You're both teachers of the years. You both teach Black students. So that goes to show you that, what you guys do in the classroom goes above and beyond helping Black students. So the purpose of us bringing you here is just to get some insight as to, some of the biases you had before you came into the classroom, and how as white educators we can help, move our Black students forward when we get into these classrooms. So before we even start, if you would guys like to give us more background, like where you came from, how you was raised, just some information about yourselves.
Sure. I did grow up in New York State. I grew up in upstate New York, so I actually lived closer to Canada than I did to New York City. But my interaction with Black people was very few and far between growing up. I actually looked up the percentage the year I graduated high school, and my town had 1.6% Blacks in the year that census. So not a whole lot of interaction, but I would say I grew up being taught not to be racist, not to be anti-racist, but how to not be racist. And your guys' first episode, when you talked about not seeing color, I laughed because I really think that's just something, especially up north, that's just something we're taught to say, that we don't see color. So I kind of giggled at that because obviously since moving to the South, I understand that is not what we should not be seeing color. So I would say that's a little bit of my background. So my husband and I moved to South Carolina. I first taught in another district before coming to Beaufort.
Awesome. Thank you, Felicia.
So as Quayne said, I was pretty much born and raised here. I've been elementary school, middle school, high school, all through Beaufort County. So I have a lot more interaction, I would say, with pretty much everybody, all diversity here in Beaufort County. I kind of grew up in it, didn't really see it as much different as anything else. My father was a Marine, so I was in that really strict, kind of hardcore Marine family, but never poor, never rich, but always was able to get what I needed at all times. I was very blessed in that way to always have what I needed to pursue anything I wanted to or to be successful. And I know a lot of my friends didn't have that so easily. And it's definitely something that brought me back to Beaufort. I had an opportunity to teach at a pretty well-off newer school in Myrtle Beach, where the population was much, much higher in a white population, and a much nicer, newer, fancy school. And I turned it down pretty quickly to come back home because the population here is what I was more drawn to try to better and hopefully lead in a better direction. I felt like I saw a lot of opportunity that was missed from a lot of youth that I grew up with. And I wanted to hopefully help maybe one or two more kids reach that opportunity that some others didn't, that I saw growing up.
Awesome, awesome. So first of all, like I said, thank y'all for being here. Awesome stories. We are all different. We are all created. We are all created differently. We all go through different obstacles in life that brings us to points where you want to help other people. I just thank y'all for taking the opportunity and being courageous enough to teach Black students. So with that being said, are there, and we can be open and honest. Nobody's going to judge you guys if so, but are there any biases that I know Felicia spoke on, like seeing color, but are there any biases that either one of you had before entering the classroom?
I would say for myself, it really was just a lack of knowledge. The fact that there really was no diversity where I grew up, I really just had no knowledge of Black culture. So moving down here, especially my first year of teaching, it was really just kind of shell shocked to learn a different culture and to have to work really hard to earn my students' respect. Where I came from, the schools, both of the schools that I student taught in, they were low income. So I, kind of dipped my feet in that aspect of it, but again, not very diverse. So my first year of teaching, luckily I had a really awesome mentor teacher, and she helped me out a lot. She was somebody that I was comfortable going to ask questions and things like that. But for myself, I just really think it was just a lack of knowledge. And then luckily after my first year of teaching, I learned a lot, and I completely changed how I approached the classroom, and luckily it's gotten better and better every year. So I really think focusing on building relationships with students is something that I needed to learn. It was something I learned the hard way, but I think I'm thankful for it, because I wouldn't be the teacher that I am if I didn't go through that experience.
Awesome, awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Great.
Yeah. Bias, I don't know if I truly had any full bias becoming a teacher here. Like I said, I grew up here, so that diversity was what I was bred into. I mean, I played sports here my whole life, so Black, brown, white, it was a brotherhood here. You grew up on the island, Lay's Island, St. Helena Island. That was kind of different groups of people that you're just surrounded by. And like I said, it's the whole reason I came back, was to be able to work with those kinds of students and help them guide further. So I don't know if I had true bias. Maybe some ignorance of assumptions of certain students are going to act certain ways, because I saw them growing up and making that assumption that this group is going to be harder than this group, or this child looks like he might be a troublemaker here. He might stir it up. I might have to try to get in good with him on day one to smooth it over for the rest of the year. So maybe just ignorance, truthfully.
All right. So, gentlemen, y'all have any questions for me before I move on?
I would say I like what you said, Clayton. That what you saw growing up, because we can all I can say, I'm saying, growing up in Columbia, South Carolina is real diverse. You go a couple steps and you are in extremely beautiful, nice, super, super rich neighborhood. And then you take a few more steps and you are in the worst side of Columbia. It's like a snap. So you might see certain individuals, and I think that's for a lot of folks. You see one group, and then what ends up happening for a lot of people, they automatically say, well, all those individuals must act just like that. So I love that you said that ignorance, because I think that can happen to a lot of different people, for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, like, you might hear or see something, but I think one thing that's also a problem is, a lot of times, say if a white person, they may not experience Black people. So what do they have now? Okay, now you have things like movies. And, even certain movies portray Black people to be certain ways. So, it's unfortunate that, some teachers, they may have like oh man, I hope that this kid doesn't act like this. I hope that this kid doesn't act like that. But at the end of the day, once you get to know them, you knock a lot of those assumptions out the window, and that's with any color, any race. But, I just think, like, for some people, like the lack of knowledge or like the lack of knowing culture, a lot of things are out there that kind of puts it in a bad light. But for people that are willing to get to know Black people and are willing to get to understand how things can really be, that makes powerful educators. And that's what we have. We have two outstanding ones right here, right now.
What do y'all think would be a great way to educate the educators who are picked up from, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and places like that, who aren't really, they're not really cultured at all. They haven't been around a lot of Black people. They haven't been around a lot of Hispanics. So this diversity comes as a slap in the face when they get here a lot of times. Like, what do you think is a great way to educate these individuals who come in from these other states that we bring in?
I think you and me talked about that a lot, and I think we've had a lot of new teachers at our school over the last couple of years, almost always from all the way up north. And you and me try to reel them in and pull them in and be like, hey, a little different in the South. You gotta not take things a certain way or take certain assumptions. We're like, they gotta get these northern teachers trained. The South is different, and it is, and that might sound ignorant in itself too, but it is different in the South. And Beaufort is even different for being in the South, and it's a special place. Growing up here, I think that's the thing that we have to get across too, is it's not just in the South or just a little different from places up north. It's Beaufort, and Beaufort's a very special place with a rich history, with that Gullah Geechee culture and all of that really, really rich stuff, Penn Center and stuff. I think they started this maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I could be wrong, that they started doing that introductory teacher level, that first year, that they took them on trips on the St. Helena and showed them a little bit of the historical relevance of town hall. So I would say that's a really big part. And those teachers got to come with a very big open mind of what Ms. Thornton was saying, not the color blindness. Like, these are these students' histories. They got grandparents and great grandparents that lived this, that are still living right here on St. Helena. So it's important to your students because this is their island, their home. So those tours and things like that for those first year teachers, I think it's vital. You have to immerse these teachers, whether you're from South Carolina or not, into the historical relevance of what our students bred and born into in Beaufort.
And I just want to add on to that, Clayton, because I will say the district I worked for previously, we did the same thing. We got on a bus and we kind of drove around, but I was not given any tools past that to help me build a relationship with students. I was showed, we have a high population of low income or poverty. We have a high percentage of Black students in our school, but beyond that, I was given nothing. So I started out school being, okay, great. I know, I'm going to be teaching a lot of Black students. I know that they're coming from a place of poverty, but beyond that, I was not given any tools. And that's why I said in the beginning, it really was a learning curve for me the first year. And I thank God for my mentor teacher, because I don't know that I would have survived without her, because she was the person that taught me how to build relationships and help me with the basis of all those things. So even moving over to Beaufort County, I really feel it was the same. You're told high percentage of Black students, high percentage of poverty, but then not given a whole lot of tools past that. So I think it's great that you guys kind of take teachers under your wing, because until you have someone that you're comfortable asking questions to, and Corey's my person now, that I can go to and talk to about things. But until you have somebody that you're comfortable doing that, you're on your own. And some teachers, get through and they go on to another year and do a lot better. And then there's other teachers that are like, I'm out. I can't do it. So when you're talking about teacher retention, I think that's a big thing as well.
And I have to, I totally agree with both of you. For myself, I taught at a predominantly Black school for my first 4 years. And now I'm on the other side of the river, on the other side of the bridge, a predominantly white school. So like even this year, my entire classroom was white. I didn't have one Black student in my class. Wow. And I did that because I wanted to challenge myself, because at that predominantly Black school, I was comfortable. And I think in order to be a great educator, you have to be uncomfortable. And I think that's a big education. We have too many teachers that are comfortable in the classroom, or that comfortable where they're at. So I wanted to challenge myself to be uncomfortable, because guess what? I grew up like most of the Black kids that I taught before, where now I'm teaching at a affluent white school where I can't relate to these students. So I went into the classroom thinking that, first of all, I had to build relationships not only with the students, but with the parents. what was the parents going to think of me as a black male teaching third graders? So, like I said, when we talk about biases, I'm sure that some of those parents had biases when they first saw me in that classroom, when they came to the parent teacher conference or meet the teacher night. So, but at the end of the year, I had a great relationship with the parents. I allowed my parents to come in my classroom whenever they wanted to. Um, I also challenge my students, because to me, as a black educator teaching white kids, this is my time to help get away from those biases that they are going to have growing up.
Mhm.
So if I'm not open and if I'm not courageous enough to challenge these kids, if I'm not courageous enough to, send them home, making them ask their parents questions. So one of my white students asked me, Mr. McMillan, why were white people so mean to black kids? And I told her straight up, I said, uh, well, why was white people so mean to black people? And I was like, I said, what color is your mom? And she was like, white. I said, what color is your grandmother? I said, she was white. She was like, she was white. I said, so those are the people that you ask. And she was like, well, Mr. McMillan, I'm not going to feel comfortable asking them that. I said, but you're comfortable asking me. So it was just interesting that a lot of these, even white kids, they're not comfortable with having those conversations with their parents. And as parents, you need to be having these conversations. That's where it starts at home and at school. And if we can do these things at home and at school, I think we'll get to that point where I'm not going to say racism is going to die or biases are going to die, but we'll be better off.
100%, 100%.
So if no one had, all right, we're going to my next question.
Next question.
So you're both teachers of the year. So obviously, not only do you have your students that love you, also you have built relationships with teachers, because in order to win teacher of the year is based on, the teachers that you work with. So they're saying some good things about you. So my next question is, what advice can you give other white educators that teach black and minority students? What is some advice that you can give?
I would say one of the most important things I've come away with, and this probably originated from my father in the military, but I kind of evolved it and took it into schools, is mutual respect. Respect has probably got to be the number one thing that I preach in my classroom. Mutual, though. Mutual. I think what I've realized coming through the last couple of years of education, my black students understand disrespect more than any other student. And that's maybe because they experience it more. They experience it in the world. Some of them experience that at home, being disrespected, in the world in general, in school. And they are much more verbal about when they feel disrespected. And that can just lead to a lot of tension with teachers. And a lot of teachers are like, they're back talking. And I was like, yeah, they are back talking because they feel like you disrespected them. Whether you felt like you disrespect them or not doesn't matter, because they felt disrespected. So I just preach above to everyone on earth above, respect both ways. I tell my kids, sir and ma'am, please and thank you. I go above and beyond to show them that I appreciate who they are and respect who they are and what they're bringing into my classroom. So, that's gonna be my number one. I'm sure we'll circle around and get some more tips here in a second, but I gotta say respect has got to be your key to opening the gate.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say that the building the relationship goes on with the respect, because the students don't just come in respecting you. And I think even in my time growing up, that's how it was. You just respected your teacher. You didn't talk back to them or things of that nature. And for me, and obviously Clayton too, we know we have to earn their respect. And how do you earn their respect? By building a relationship with them. So I think a lot of the times we're told, oh, you have to build a relationship with your kids, but you're kind of like, yeah, at first, okay, I'm the authority figure in the classroom, but it's true. You have to earn their respect. You have to show them that you love them and you care about them. And I think being a white educator, especially in front of Black students, you have to work harder to earn that respect. So or in those relationships with them. So I would tell new white educators that they need to build a relationship with those students and they need to take the time to do so. That could be during lunch, that could be during recess, that could be during morning meetings, when they come in off the bus. I know we have downtime with our students, not a whole lot of it, but it's important. And sometimes you even have to make it so it's one-on-one. Sometimes it can't be just whole class building a relationship, but sometimes you have to have that one-on-one time to really get through to that student that you do respect them and you care about them. And then I think the respect back follows.
So Queen, Billy, or Corey, do y'all have any advice as well to that was both great advice from Clayton and Felicia, but do any of you have any advice for working with Black and minority students?
Well, I think Clayton and Felicia, they summed it up. But I like what Felicia said in the beginning. She said that, if it's ever a question or something she's not sure about, she can come to me and she can ask me, and I think that goes a long way because, if I might know something that she might not know, or anybody in my school for that matter, I feel like I know the answer. And I feel like because I am Black and she's white or anybody else, if it's a question, they should be able to come and ask me, but I just think that the ability for other educators from other demographics, they have to be willing to ask and seek help if they need it. Because, we know a lot of times, well, as people in general, a lot of us are closed books, any color. But for kids, you can mold a kid and, you can figure out a lot about kids. And we all know once you get that relationship with a kid, man, they'll spill the beans. They'll tell you any and everything. But, for a white educator, I feel like one of the main things is just asking somebody that they really can count on and asking somebody that they can trust to just help them and guide them along the way.
Well, you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Quinn. You got to come.
Oh, okay. All right. So I like what Felicia said about building relationships. It has to be authentic. Those relationships that you're building, it has to be authentic. It can't just be some cutesy thing that you got off of teacher pay teachers that you think is going to look nice and it's going to be. It has to be, all right, I really want to build this relationship, but I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to let it happen. So it could be y'all are out, you're out on the playground and they're coming to you and they're asking you questions. Don't just shoo them away. No, talk to them. Actually talk to them and get to know about what they did over the weekend. If they're talking about, I got a birthday party with my cousins coming up and they're really wanting to tell you all of this in the morning. Let's say in the morning. A lot of times as educators, we're still waking up. We want to get that coffee in our system. We want to get this activity prepared for later. They come up and they talk to you. I always tell my students the first couple minutes in the morning after you get all your stuff done, if you need to come talk to me, come talk to me. That's where you truly build those relationships with them. That's where you really get to know them as a person and not just another student that you're having for the year. So building those relationships, super important, but it has to be an authentic thing. Willie, it's on you. You got it, brother.
Tough subject here. You want to be able to give the best advice. I struggle in this subject because ultimately schools are failing children, right? So, in light of that, it's a great thing to get kids moving through, but when so many African-American kids are not graduating high school and when there's an obvious gap between white students and Black, it feels like sometimes these conversations might be polite, but just not. If I could give any advice, I would think like go in like you're trying to win teacher of the year, but imagine that the white coworkers down the hall is not voting for you. Going like you want to win teacher of the year, but imagine that the vote won't come from teachers who may not look like anybody in your class. Imagine if that vote came from the kids in your class. How then would you approach education? Go in there and imagine that those kids are the principals. Those kids are the administrators. Those kids are is the body that will give you the award at the end of the year, and go into to make sure that their education journey is the best possible. And I think that's the best way. A lot of things is really about just doing the same thing you know to do with every other child, making sure that you let unconscious you make a decision or limit a child based on anything, whether it's race, color, stature, weight, how he talks. And to me, that you know, a really fundamental thing. And even go to teachers that come out of town. Do you know Port Royal Experiment? You know, do you know the stories of Fort Fremont? Have you really immersed yourself in the culture of, you know, with a little due diligence, learn about things that are important to the area? Because inevitably, systems are racial. Inevitably, school systems are components of bias. And even if you're a good teacher, that somehow just doesn't mean that you really affected, you know, the life of each student in your classroom appropriately. And so, you know, I really on the side do more than do less, and really take it personal. Like, as I go through my class or I go through my school, I often get a lot of slack from teachers, especially at the bus stop, because I don't care if you're starting first, third, fourth. I want to slap your hand. I want to know your name. I want to talk to you. I want to find out who's your cousin. What do you do? What's your favorite sport? What's your favorite ice cream? And I'm doing this regardless if you're not. And that's what real relationships are built on. They're not built on, well, now that you came in my class, I'm gonna find a relationship with you. You know, if you don't know a good bit of kids coming into your class prior to them coming in, and you've been teaching at that school for a while, you really don't care about that kid. Because if he was in that school since kindergarten, why did you wait till he got on your class list to find out his name? If you truly care. And that's where it has to be more than a teacher strategy, and it has to be more of a conscious thing that you acknowledge. And you really have to care about these kids. And it has to be more than just I'm making it through the year or I can manage my class. Do you really care about these kids? And in doing so, sometimes you find yourself at conflict with the school. And I would challenge my two guests. Guys, how many ESOL had in your class last year? If you might remember.
Said how many ESOL kids do we have?
Right.
Last year, one.
One? Okay. What about Clayton, you had one. What about who else was on? Alicia?
Yeah, we only had one or two.
And see, right there is a conscious bias. If you had a black kid from the island, and see, right there, those are the things that we have to understand. And Felicia looked at me like, what? Yeah. In his household, I guarantee you, he does not speak standard American English. He speaks nothing of which he's going to write. And when he writes the word churn down and he puts it CHURN, if you don't understand that phonetically, that's how he hears it, and you address this kid as a spelling error, you just crushed him. And really, he might be a better speller than other kids who may be funny, but are they hearing children? Or are they hearing churn? See, that right there is a conscious bias. And those kind of things that you really have to look at. And maybe you don't even know unless somebody tells you, right? Because a lot of kids that may have been affected by unconscious bias, and all the kids that might have been plagued by it, will never get the opportunity to articulate it, because somewhere in their education process, it's been cut. They don't have the tools to tell you how you hurt them, right? And if they never have a voice, how do you ever advance, or how do you evolve as an educator to stop that cycle? Because you have a lot of kids that come out of this school system voiceless, right? If I came out and became incarcerated and I can't vote, I'm voiceless, right? So how can I tell you that the system that put me here is unfair when I don't have a voice to tell you? So, you know, I err on the side of it's really bigger than we know. And that's just one little example of, well, I thought one was Esau. And now next year when you come in, every kid out the Gullah Geechee corridor is Esau. He's an Esau kid. And if you don't understand that, and if you don't address it like that, you're doing him a great disservice. If you believe that he's heard the words that the way we want him to spell it, and if we're using the same phonemic awareness and we're not aware, we're doing that kid a disservice. So I think that what you guys obviously do is outstanding in the classroom, and you're able to, you know, with love and hard work, you could cross a lot. You could cover a lot of errors. You can cover a lot of flaws, but there also has to be an education into the deeper issue of bias and institutional race, what it tends to be, and how do we really seek this? So not only do they get through your class, educator, but how do they get through the not so great educator, right? Because we're not worried about the Mr. Claytons of the world, right? That's not what's going to stop them. But what about when they get to the next student? Did you prepare them for the next educator who might not be teacher of the year material, who might not be as willing to actually come down here and learn this culture? And those things have to be addressed.
All right, so I definitely, Willie, you hit some of the nails right on the head. And I think a lot of times when we talk about things that we can do to build relationships, like Mr. Quaim said, they definitely have to be authentic. But, and I also agree with Willie that, you know, we have to go deeper, and it's a lot deeper. You know, we talk about, you know, discipline disparities of Black students. You know, why are we writing up and disciplining Black students, you know, twice as much as we discipline white students? It's because of some of these biases. Because it's almost, to me, when you talk about education and you talk about issues, then we're talking about, you know, school to prison pipeline. And these are things, school to prison pipeline starts in kindergarten. When we're starting to discipline, you know, kindergartners. So by the time third grade come, we know how many jail cells to build for our Black kids and our Black students, preferably more specifically our black males. So we have to go deeper and ask ourselves. And I know, you know, it's just two of you right now. So we have to go, and like I tell everybody in general, when we think about education in general, 83% of all educators are white middle-aged women. So this is facts. This is data that you can go and research. Black males only make up 2% of teachers nationwide. So as Black males, you see four, and these are the four you see right now are the 4 Black males that teach elementary education in L County. So tell me that this is not a problem when, you know, the data specifically states that when students of color have a teacher that resembles them or looks like them, they're more likely to achieve. They're more likely to graduate. They're more likely to go on to college. And this is not just Black students that are more likely to succeed. The research shows that all students that, you know, get that Black male teacher will go on to graduate and go on to college. But why are there so few teachers? And I know that we have a teacher shortage. So what I'm saying is we have to start doing things that, and Felicia hit it on the head too when we talk about teacher retention. What are we doing to retain these teachers? Like, to me, I should not see a school full of, I'm sorry, I should not see a school full of white teachers at a predominantly Black school. This is when we're talking about the disciplinary disparities. This is when we're talking about school to prison pipeline, because guess what? We're feeding them to the prison system. Because like Felicia and Clayton said, if you're not building those relationships, then you're part of the problem in these schools. And we have to go as much deeper than just the relationships. That's a start, but it's much deeper. Are we building relationships with the parents? What are we doing in the communities? Do you even know the community that you teach in? Or do you just go, you know, get in your car, you live in a suburb, you get in your car, and then you drive to the school, you drive past the neighborhood, you get out, you go into the school, and then guess what? At 2:45, when you clock out, you get in your car, you go back to the suburbs. You have, the relationship goes beyond the classroom.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add. I mean, I think when me and Clayton are asked, what advice do you have? We're thinking like, what's the first thing you need to understand in order to teach Black students? Like Mr. Terrell said, understanding, I mean, I work in Port Royal. I need to understand the community of Port Royal. Port Royal is so small. Everybody knows everybody. Half the kids are related to each other. Like, you have to know that. But if I'm thinking, what's the first thing I can tell a teacher that moves down here from Pennsylvania, from New York? I'm going to tell them, you need to build a relationship with your student. As Mr. Thornton says, it needs to be authentic. And that's how you earn the respect from them, right? Then you're not writing them up because you have an understanding with each other, and they're not going to act up for you. I can't tell you how many times teachers have come to me and said, and Corey, I know, knows the same thing. They act up for me. Why don't they act up for you? Because I have a relationship with them, and they know that they respect me, so they're not gonna act like that with me. So yeah, I definitely think it has to go beyond the classroom, but I also think we can't just shove all this down a new teacher's throat or somebody who moves down here. We have to kind of step it. That might not necessarily be right, but I think that's the reality, because if you're like, you need to do this, 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 and this, 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 and this, then I think that's as scary as, treading water. But that's my opinion.
And Mrs. Horton, I
Hey, really,
wholeheartedly agree. And I think, say what?
I really agree with the approach y'all are taking about these real authentic relationships. And I'm just going to add on to it that those roots need to be deep. You got to have those deep roots, not just with a student. I'm talking in the school. So when you're walking down those hallways, up in 5th grade. I'm dabbing up all these preschoolers, all these kindergartners, and I'm right there with Quain. That's our mindset. We're going to treat every one of these children like they're coming to our class. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, 4 more years, you and me. You dig those roots deep, because when you are at that school for multiple years, and that's just building up. I'll remember that teacher. He's the one that's always dabbing me up in the hallway. He's always the one telling me to tuck my shirt in. Yeah, I'm already telling you to tuck your shirt in. I love you. I want you to be successful. Get those roots deep in your school. Take pride in that. Tell your kids, you're going to be in my class. I want you in my class. You and me. We're going to make magic happen. Check up on them. All right, we have kind of these mentoring programs. I was talking to a pre-K kindergarten student multiple times this year because he's struggling, getting in trouble. Bring him on over. I'll see him in the hallway crying. My class, go ahead and walk to lunch. Come and talk to me for a little bit. The students don't need to be in your class. And I think that's what these new teachers need to understand. You can build these authentic relationships with the school, with the community. All right, don't be scared to get your roots deep.
Absolutely.
I really just wanted to add on to that because all y'all were touching on it, and I loved it. It's so important. Yeah. True, real relationships.
I definitely agree. Before Tyron cut me off, and I'm glad that you and Porter said the same thing. Yeah, but what I was going to say, and to kind of address both of you, I absolutely think you're correct. And that's why even as a grander issue or something that needs to be addressed is how we educate educators, right? We need to talk about how we educate educators. It's a major problem because for so many teachers come into any situation ill-prepared. For me as myself personally to come in a situation not feeling fully prepared and really come into a great education program, I'm even more fearful for programs that isn't as comprehensive and didn't touch on as so much that I did. I call me Mr. Experience. So we really need to talk about like how we prepare educators and curriculum. What is most important, because a lot of things that you learn in college don't in the classroom, and we first need to teach teachers how to float. I mean, and of course we want rock star teachers. We want the best. But if a teacher can't even manage that situation, if they can't manage their stress, they can't survive, and the turnover is high. We're constantly damaging really the students, because how can you have any consistency if you're constantly losing teachers? And this is not to say that bad teachers so they need to leave. They just weren't really. And I see it even as a big issue how we recruit. And we recruit a lot of people out of state, and it just doesn't make sense that we have out of state recruit or numbers, and we're not really preparing people to come to this specific culture. So I mean, that needs to be addressed, whether it's developing more teachers locally or preparing teachers that come in. But just as a nationwide problem, teachers are very ill prepared coming out of college to actually handle the day-to-day operations and the things that are most important and often become the mechanisms that cause us to quit early as teachers.
Absolutely.
How do you think you make it real for them? Because even growing up here, when I took my first diversity education class at Coastal, I was rolling my eyes, honestly. I was just like, oh, yeah. Like, I get it. Colorblind, don't be colorblind. Like, I grew up with a lot of African Americans, and brown, black, white, like, we're all cool. Because that's what I thought it kind of was here in Beaufort at Lazon Middle School. Like, we were all tight. And I kind of just blew over the diversity class. I didn't really take in all the education that I truly should have from that. And it was kind of a slap in the face coming back to Beaufort to teach. And like, all right, this stuff actually was really important. It actually mattered. I needed to dig deeper into what these people's lives are so I can appreciate it more and use it as teaching points. So how do you get people that don't really see it as a major thing until they're already a year in and they're dying because they're drowned?
I'll say this about, like, even in college, about cultural diversity training and cultural sensitivity training. A lot of that they teach you in college has no substance, because what they're trying to teach you in college is just just to give you a little taste of, okay, these are black. You need to make sure you see everybody for who they are, blah, blah, blah. But when it's all said and done, my thing is this, if you're in a cultural diversity class and it doesn't make you uncomfortable, then you're not learning anything. And that's the facts. If you're not uncomfortable, if it's not challenging who you are, if it's not challenging your morals, your values, how your parents raised you, if it's not making you ask questions about, did I grow up racist, or did I grow up with all of these biases, if it's not challenging you and it's making you uncomfortable, then those classes are just to check on a list to say I've completed it. So when these classrooms, you're not going to be ready.
Tyron, I agree. And Mr. Clayton, Mr. Wynn, I'm so glad that you were on the call because of the big statement that you made. And I remember your frustration of sitting in the USCB class during and I know some people are going to laugh because they're probably in that class with me. And I almost blew a fuse because the teachers that were soon to be educators, servants of Beaufort County, were laughing and playing as if this was some kind of joke. And it touched me in a real profound way because as a black male student first, you don't know how hurtful those practices are. You don't know how it kills you to be pressed down or to be attacked for something that you cannot change is devastating. And to laugh at that or to take this light when this very same training leads to George Floyd's, this very same training leads to broken homes and broken houses and broken kids. I didn't find it funny at all. And I was so close to just walking out because I was fearful for these educators that were about to be teaching kids to really take that as a joke. But I'm so glad that you stepped forward, and maybe that gives me a little clarity on maybe they weren't as devious as I imagined, but maybe just ignorant to a sense, or maybe just unknowing of how deep this was. But I think you're absolutely right. And my question goes, if you're in poverty, how can you teach someone about being rich, right? If you can't manage money, how can you teach finance? And a lot of these diversity people who are teaching diversity aren't diverse, right? So how unaware or not even aware of your own biases, like how can you then educate us and really make sure that students see the importance? Because I'm telling you, as a professor in this class, if I saw that, you got to retake this class because you obviously don't get it. And this is too big. It's too big of an issue just to sweep it under the rug, and reform and change happen on this. Because if we're signing off on teachers to come and take care of the nation's children, it ought to mean more. It ought to mean something way more than we put into it. And then it goes into even a bigger issue of economics and how we get paid as teachers. And that's a whole nother situation. But I'm so glad that you said that. And hopefully if anybody is on or sharing this information, that they talk to people in education programs and start stressing the importance of having great classes, great discussions on race and ethics and morality. And it needs to be done. It needs to be serious.
All right. Quamo, before you have anything going on, we're
all good.
No. Yeah, I'm good too. I'm good.
All right, so I know we're past time, and the conversation can last for hours and hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. So before we close out, I just want to, and I want everybody, I'm gonna give you guys 1 minute. If there's anything anything that's on your mind that you want to say, or anything that you want to add to the conversation, I'll give you 1 minute apiece before we all close out. All right, and I'll start. Alicia, if you want to start.
Yeah, I would just say, based on the conversation we were just having, that I think it's just as important to have those types of trainings with teachers that are still teaching up north, because they still need to show their students diversity. And I can say that firsthand because I went to school in New York, I went to college in New York, and then I came down here. So I did have one multiculturalism class, but I think also when I was in that class, I was thinking, okay, but I don't live in a diverse area. And that was wrong in my thinking, because really, even as a white educator still teaching white children, I still need to be teaching them diversity, because I don't know where they're going to end up when they get older. And I can say, since George Floyd's murder, how my thinking has changed from growing up in upstate New York to moving down south. And Corey and I have had multiple conversations, but seeing Facebook posts and Instagram posts of people that I grew up with who are so ignorant and they just think if they don't see it, it doesn't exist. And so I think maybe if they did have a little bit more diversity in their life growing up, even just in regular school, that maybe they would be able to challenge their thinking a little bit and not just think that it's not there, so they don't believe it exists.
All right, Mr. Clayton.
Just real quick for the teachers out there, I just want to say maybe your admin might not approve of this, mine might not either. Never be scared to miss an entire educational block of math or English to have a real, authentic conversation with your students. If there's stuff going on, get down on your knees with them, sit kumbaya, go outside, talk to your students, be real. Your students will never understand what that real conversation and emotion comes from you, and say, hey, this is important math, but it's not nearly as important as what's going on with y'all right now, or your mindset, or your behavior, or your emotion. This is what's most important, you as people. If you guys can put that first, I promise you, me and Clay push it all the time, education will come. This is a gold mine in Beaufort of raw, amazing, beautiful children with outstanding, incredible thresholds of talent. Help grow them as people and help them overcome their personal challenges behaviorally, socially, emotionally, and then the educational stuff will come. Never be scared to take a moment out of that educational day to touch on what's truly important. Sorry, admin. Say that. We need teachers. Never be scared to do that.
You're speaking the truth, and the truth hurts. All right, Mr. Corey.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thank you too for joining us. And you know, as we all know, at the end of the day, man, the key to all this is relationships. And Clayton, I mean, what you just said, you know, you understand that academics are important, but you know, if something's going on in their life that's important, you got to address that. I know me, and I know a lot of you, and I know of a few more teachers. I don't teach anything the first 2-3 weeks of school. I'm strictly building relationships, doing team building activities. But I watch a lot of people and I hear a lot of people, oh, I'm going to teach them, or I'm going to teach this. I'm going to start teaching math. I'm going to start doing this. No, you missed the opportunity to build a relationship from the beginning. And a lot of time when you miss something from the beginning and you try to come in at a later time, it's too late. And no matter what you can do, is almost too late for a lot of these kids. But that's all I have to say. Thank y'all for coming on.
All right. Thank you, Corey. Ms. Queen.
I appreciate both of y'all coming in, giving your opinions on everything, and being brave enough to have these type of conversations. You have to be brave. If I told Corey and I told another buddy, I was like, a lot of things are boiling over because, like, just in the world in general, because people are trying to put band-aids on wounds that are deep. I mean, that are deep, that have been going on for generations and generations and generations. You just can't put a band-aid on that. And nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to have these type of conversations that do make you uncomfortable, that does challenge you as an individual, your morality as an individual a little bit, to say, okay, like Tyron said, am I racist? Did I grow up the wrong way? And that's you challenging everything that you've ever learned. So I appreciate you, Mr. Wynn. I appreciate you, Ms. Horton, as well, for coming on and just being honest and not being afraid to have this type of conversation.
Yeah.
I wish there were more like you.
Amen.
Yeah. To our two guest teachers that came on, Mr. Wynn, I know of your teaching a little more personally, but both guys, just thank you for what you do. It is a godsend for a child to get a good education and a great education. Just the fact that you came on shows your character. You know, just the fact that you came on shows where you stand. And that being said, I'll say this, that you know, to judge someone based on color, that's to be racist. But to not see color at all is far worse. You don't have to be perfect to be a great educator. You just have to be smart enough to know that you're not perfect, and care enough to know that you're not perfect, and willing to work to a better understanding. And it takes empathy, and it also takes a lot of humility put yourself, to come down and come eye level with the students, and really, when you're really aspiring to be a great educator, you should be below them, because they are the reason why we. And if we don't understand from the moment we take the job to we retire, to whatever, that you're there for the students, then you're really going to do them a disservice. You really can't be the best educator that you could be. I'll just leave it with that. And I thank you guys again for coming out.
All right, so I definitely want to same thing. Thank both of you guys for coming on our show. Thanks for being courageous. It's sad to me, like, and I don't care who you are. If you are a white educator and you are silent right now, you don't need to be in the classroom. And I'm just going to say it like that. If you are a white educator teaching our Black kids and you are silent right now, then you are in the wrong profession. And I'm gonna just keep it like that. And I'm going to keep it real. But also, I want to say that we have to be willing to be open as educators. Like, I knew that I couldn't relate to these white kids going into this year of teaching, but I was willing to go into the classroom and be vulnerable. I was willing to put myself out there. I was willing to learn from them. And if we're not willing to learn from our students, remember, as educators, we should be lifelong learners. And if our kids understand that we can learn from them, that's part of building that relationship as well. I taught third grade for 5 years, and I can promise you, every time I learned something from my third graders, I told them that I learned something. I wasn't afraid to tell them that I learned something from them. That's put yourself out there. Don't think that we know everything. Also, like you guys said, you have to be willing to ask questions. If you don't know, ask questions. If you are a white teacher and you have a close relationship with another Black teacher, ask questions. But I'm a double and I'm a rebuttal that. But because as Black educators, we have to be willing to teach white educators as well. We can't assume that white educators know, just like we don't assume that our students know everything. We also have to be willing not to make our white educators feel bad when they're trying to teach something or when they're trying to learn something. Because so many times, that's why, white educators don't want to teach about Black history, or because they're afraid that it's not going to come out right. They're afraid that, that Black counterpart is going to take it as racism or take it as biases. So as Black educators, we have to make our white educators feel comfortable as well when they're trying to teach something. If they do something wrong, pull them to the side. Don't make a big scene, because once you make a big scene, then they're going to shut down, and then they're not going to want to teach. So I challenge all Black educators. This is the time where you need to be more open to, white educators. If they have a question, ask. Don't judge them. Don't be judgmental. Don't have a conversation with your other counterparts after they ask you the question. Oh, such and such asked me this. I can't believe they don't know this. We have to remember, education is about working together. I can't do anything in education by myself. As leaders, your culture and the climate of your school says everything. And when you're teaching Black students, if the culture of your school is not correct, then guess what? Those Black students aren't going to learn anyway. So we can sit here and talk about, achievement gap. We can talk about opportunity gaps. We can talk about all of these gaps. But as leaders, as a administration, principals, assistant principals, if your culture and climate isn't correct when dealing with Black students, guess what? They're not going to learn from you anyway. Your teachers are not going to learn. Your teachers are not going to grow. And if your teachers can't grow, guess what? Your students can't grow. So I'm going to leave it like that. And I'm just going to say thank you. I appreciate you both.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience with you guys. So thank you for what you're doing.
Awesome.
Very much.
All right. Thank you all. And this is the end of Black Males Educate Intentional Talk. And we'll see you again next Sunday at 7:00 p.m. Thank you all.